Alright, just because of the content of this one and the way that my life's gone lately, I can already feel how raw this one might be. And honestly, I think for the last few days, I think thinking about this one has really gotten to me. Alright, as that intro showed, this one's been a tough one, so I'm just going to do it this time, and I'm just going to hope that everything comes together. Connecting with our children. The first point is, we've got to be real. If we're not real with these children, they can tell straight away. We need to be open, we need to be honest, we need to be vulnerable. If we try and lie to these children, they just know. I've seen it at home, I've seen it in schools, I've seen it in residential care, I've seen it in families, I've seen it in the community. I've just seen it over and over and over. If we start lying to our children, first of all, it doesn't really stop. Secondly, we just lose respect. They don't know what they can and can't believe, so they're just going to not believe anything. And I think we all do that in our lives. So how can we blame these little people for doing that? We need to be willing, ready, and able to sell out any of the mistakes that we make. If we mess something up, just admit it to them. We can use it as a teaching moment. We can use it to help them. And the best part is, if we're willing to own our mistakes, they're going to be more willing to own their mistakes. We can start to call them out a little less subtly. We can say it how it really is. We can just treat these people like little people and let them grow into massive, awesome, productive big people. Second point, we need to be listening to these children. Again, they're little people. We need to treat them, if they're 2 or 72, the exact same way. Sure, we take their words a little bit differently, but if we're talking to them just like they're people, we're going to grow them so much quicker because they're already almost in that adult world. We can carefully bring them into things more and more and more. As the adult, as the carer, as the person that's an authority figure in their life, we know what they can and can't handle to some degree. We should have a better handle on it than other people should. So let's just be real. Let's listen to them. Let's learn from them as well. They can teach us. They know things that we don't know. Think about some of the technology stuff that we don't know how to use. They're on that stuff a lot more than us. There's things that they can show us, even just in their games. Find a way into their world, find a way to listen, and they're going to listen to you so much more. There's a whole different language to learn here. These kids are using words, children are using words that we don't even understand sometimes. Like, I'm not even going to try anymore because these words change so quickly. This video won't mean anything in a few months if we start talking about some of the words they use. Think about some of these dances they've been doing lately. They change just as quickly. There's so many different interests in their little lives. If we start to peer into there, they're going to be more than happy to let us come in. It'll be a good laugh for them. We'll get to learn. We'll all laugh together. From there, we're literally going to figure out who these little people are. If we're listening, if we're learning, if we're taking an interest in them, they're going to give so much more, and we're going to have such a better opportunity to come in and to learn and to know our own children. Who doesn't really want that? All it comes down to is taking the time. We're spending the time here. It's an investment. If we think about it like spending, it's a lot easier than thinking that we're just wasting our time. We need to be intentional with this stuff. We need to give to them. We need to be literally willing to spend our time on our children. I've got a saying, hard now or harder later. We've got the choice. Do we want to spend a bit of time now, or do we want to try and clean up something in the future? Because it's so much harder to break a habit, to break a pattern, than it is to teach the right habit and pattern from the beginning. Just think about our own lives again. How many things do we do that we don't want to do, and how many things do we want to do that we just can't seem to do? It's like going to the gym. At the beginning of every single year, there's so many people that sign up for gym memberships that the gyms even know they're not going to use. It's almost a way that they can bank on money. With our children, it's the exact same. If we set these things up right, if we begin with going and doing instead of just investing and wasting our time, it's going to go so much better. We're investing in the right thing here. We're investing in spending our time on our children to avoid future problems. If you need a why, there's your why. The more time we spend now, the less time we need to spend later. Hard now or harder later. Take your pick. From there, I don't know where I'm at. From there, we need to show respect. While we're listening, we're showing respect to our children because hopefully we're taking the time to let them communicate back to us. Rather than like me just talking at people all the time, we're pausing, we're having a break, and we're letting them kind of lead the conversation. We're letting them guide. Again, we're letting them teach. If we can listen like that, we're going to go so much further with building a scaffolding around their lives. We can start to understand how they're building their life as well, and we're going to know what to give to them as well. We can be that scaffolding, that safe boundary around their life that's going to help them to grow into a much taller, stronger tower. We can even run experiments if we're listening closely enough, but I might get back to that in a bit. Just like a scaffolding, our next point here is boundaries. We need to be giving boundaries to these children. This is going to sound completely backwards, but bear with me. The amount of times I've seen completely out of control children turn around because of boundaries. It's almost like they just want somebody to listen to them. Having a boundary seems like a tough thing to us sometimes, especially when we're trying to hold it. But to these children, it's showing that we care, especially if we're willing to be open to own our mistakes and to tell them why we have these boundaries. Just like I started saying before, we can experiment, we can move these things around. They don't need to be so solid and rigid that we can't say, whoa, we messed this thing up, let's just change it and tweak it a little bit. The more that we spend that time with the children, the more that we give them a chance to explain what they're thinking, the more that we can move and guide these things to actually help them rather than just to make our lives easier. Because let's face it, it's so much easier to discipline children by just laying down a law that makes our lives easier. With these boundaries, we want to actually give them an opportunity to make mistakes. We're setting up a boundary so that they've got like a safe playpen to just experiment in. We're trying to let them learn. We're trying to teach them how to do things. That's going to take mess. Imagine trying to cook and to have never even cooked a pancake before. How messy is everything going to be? You know what? I'm like 36. Just baking cakes at the start of the year, I'd flick batter everywhere if I used the wrong utensils sometimes. Learning things and making new things is messy. We're making boundaries to help our children be safe while they make that mess. Again, hard now, harder later. If we make this boundary now, we're going to be able to let them go so much further in the future because we're going to know the kind of things they're thinking, not just what they're going to do in any given situation. We're going to actually know our children, and we're going to know that we've fed into the things that seem like a deficiency to us. We're going to build a much stronger character, a much stronger person by using smart boundaries with our children. Now, one of the easiest ways to start this is going to sound almost backwards to what I just said. If we start to look at the places where our children are annoying us and start to bring boundaries in there, for me, one of the first things was literally, are you kidding me? My camera's about to turn off. I like doing these in one shot. We'll be back to boundaries. Well, that was fun. That was like an hour of garbage, so there's a little bit of background. So, as I was trying to say, one of the easiest ways to get into these boundaries is to just think about where our children actually annoy us. What are they doing that gets under our nerves? If we start there, for me, it was chewing, something that simple. If we start with something like that, we can bring in a boundary, and having a boundary like that is going to make us want to spend more time with our children. That's the backward bit here. It sounds kind of cruel and unusual, but it gives us practice with boundaries. It gives them an opportunity to kind of see that vulnerability and that realness, because we can begin to explain once they fall into line why it is that that kind of thing gets to us. We can make it super personal. We can say that it's a character flaw for us, but we can explain, depending on the age of the child, what that actually does for us, what that does for them, and how these boundaries really work. Because then in the future, again, hard now or harder later, if we've explained why we're putting in boundaries, by the time they're teenagers, pushing that 15, 16 years old, when they really want to start to actually rebel, then they're going to understand why we're doing some of these more constrictive things. And by then, hopefully we can trust them enough to give them a whole bunch of space and let them go and make all of those mistakes. Another place that we want to bring in these boundaries, especially these days, is with our technology and with our TV. All of this entertainment stuff, entertainment in general. We've got our music, we've got our TV, we've got all the tech, we've got all the games, we've got all the different communication. We need these children to get offline a little bit more. We need them to be using their hands still. That's going to actually improve their mind and make them even better with the technology. The other problem is, with all the entertainment these days, between school, trying to spend time around us, any of the other responsibilities, and then the crazy amount of time that they're on this entertainment and technology trip, They're literally just becoming a kind of person that we don't even understand, that we've got no idea about if we're not in these entertainment and tech worlds. If we can pull them away from that a little bit, get them doing those more tactile things like I was saying with their hands, their brains will be sharper and they'll have an advantage over these children that are just swamped and swarmed by dopamine and by all of this entertainment garbage. If you think about it, everything's got an agenda and everything's got a way of life attached to it. We want to keep these children away from toxic ideas which are in the entertainment and in these games and stuff, and we want to be able to give them the ideas that we've got. We want them to be able to think for themselves. We want them to not just join in with the crowd and take the status quo, and that's all this entertainment and technology stuff is going to teach them at the end of the day if we're not taking some kind of responsibility and control for it. That's why I tell people to avoid the tech, to avoid the technology, and to try and actually teach them some life skills, some lessons, some things with their hands. It'll make them go much further. We don't want to completely eliminate it, but this will add to just their overall well-being. That's what it all comes down to, their well-being. Again, this is just going to, well, not again, my last point here on our boundaries is putting in these safeguards and trying to take away some of this entertainment and technology stuff, trying to claw back for the attention and the affection of our own children. That's actually going to keep them away from anybody else that has a harmful agenda for them. If we don't know what they're filling their minds with, we don't have a clue how they're going to be acting out in society. If we can at least help them to be a bit more rational, to think things through a little bit, if we can be around them spending that time again and getting to know who they actually are and giving them some of our ideas, teaching them some of the hard-earned lessons that we've had in our lives, they're going to be much more equipped than we were, and hopefully they'll be standing on shoulders of other people. Hopefully then this technology and this entertainment will come back in and wrap back around, and they'll start to pick up good ideas. They'll start to actually be able to validate these ideas. They'll start to be able to weigh up what's actually worth it, what isn't worth it, and hopefully they'll become much more productive than we are and go much further than we are. Again, I've said it in other videos, or when I tried to make this one the last 3 or 4 times, these children are our future. If we don't invest in them now, what's going to be leading our country later? What's going to be leading our world into the future? We are literally making that with this time that we spend on these children. Our last point here, it's almost like the rant that I just went on there. We need to be a coach. We're there to teach them, we're there to guide them, and then we're there to step back and watch them play the game. We need to be very careful, especially the older they get, that we're not just interfering too much in their lives. I know that to them a lot of the time, it feels like we're all over them and smothering them, and if we're not careful, we can be that devouring parent, and we do not want to be that. We want to be sitting on the bench with the rest of the team, cheering them on and helping them when they feel hurt. Literally waiting until that last second, seeing how much they can push it, seeing how close they can get to injury. We want to stop the injuries, but we need to be mature enough. We need to have enough of a stomach. We need to be ready to watch these children get so close to that hurt and that pain and that anguish that we felt in our lives. Just because we've gone through it and learned the lesson, just because we're 5, 6, however many times ahead of them, we need to be ready, willing, and able to let them learn and grow on their own. They're going to be walking at a different pace to we are. They could be running or riding a skateboard. They could be on a scooter, whatever's going on these days. They could be on a hoverboard. We need to be willing, ready, and able to let them skin their knee. We need to let them hurt themselves. That's how we learn our lessons. We can't just have these boundaries there to keep them restricted in. These boundaries are there to keep them safe so they don't get killed. They're there to get them as close as they can to this risk and danger. Well, they're there to let them through and into this risk and danger. We want to get them as close as they can to actually harming themselves. We need to be rational enough to realize where that true harm is and keep them away from that, but we can't go too far and devour them in the meantime. We need to let them fail. This is going to help us know where we can upskill them. If we're watching these places that they're getting just too close to danger, we can give them the extra skills to keep themselves safe, to make the educated decision, to literally decide what they want to do. Then we need to be there to support them, to hug them, to coddle them at the end. Again, I'm still talking to this like teenager getting older kind of deal because that's what's in my head at the moment. We need to be ready, willing, and able to coach them and to literally upskill them as they're failing. We need to let them go through a lot of this pain, otherwise they're not going to become the people we are. They're going to become just weak shadows of what we are if we try and just impress ourselves and constrain them into what we feel comfortable with. It's about pushing our boundaries while we're extending and expanding theirs, upskilling them. let them practice. If you don't practice, if you don't make these mistakes, you're not going to get good at the game. That's the whole reason that we have practice for music teams, why the whole reason that we have practice for sports teams, the whole reason that we practice anything, chess, debating, all of it. Even just math. School is literally about letting children practice. We need to do that in all areas of their life so they become competent. You're never going to It takes a rare person to get good at just other people's experiences by reading books, etc. They're going to help with the upskilling, but they need to get in there. They need to take these risks and they need to learn how to control themselves. That's all practice really is. How well can you control yourself? The more that we practice and let them practice as they're younger, the better that they're going to be at the art of practice, and the quicker they'll learn and upskill themselves into and beyond adulthood. The next thing is, again, with our spending time, we're trying to model and to guide these children. That's what being a coach is. We're there to show them exactly that right form, or the best form that we can show them, so they can take all the lessons that we've learned, all the things that we've practiced and learned to do, and they can build on that. I said it before, we're trying to just build on each other's things every single time. If you think about it, your parents built on your grandparents, and we're building from our parents. It's just how this thing works. The more that we can take ourselves out of this equation, the more that we can get rid of our fears and our hopes, the more that we can step back and just give our advice and our knowledge and just keep them safe where we know they're actually in danger, the better they're going to do, the better they're going to be, and the further they're going to go. Get in there with them. Play the game with them. We're helping them practice. We're helping them learn. We're coaching and guiding. We're modeling the whole thing. Let's be ready, willing, and able to make a mess with them. I said about making a mess before. This can come down to anything. We can get them to teach us something new. We can make a mess with them. I'm half losing this now, so I'm just going to cut it off and stop it. You guys got this. See you later.